Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Tanner here, and welcome to a new Ninjago video here on the channel. In today's video, we are doing an updated list of my ranking of the seasons. This is the video that I make pretty much every once in a while, where I go through all the existing Ninjago seasons and rank them worst to best. Usually I wait in between seasons, and sometimes I will wait in between two seasons before I update this video. Now, we have not updated this video since I believe Master of the Mountain came out, so we are missing the Island and Seabound. And as both of those seasons have, I guess, finished their airing in English territories, I figured I would go ahead and update this list. This is my list of all of the Ninjago seasons and specials ranked worst to best. Now, for a quick couple of disclaimers, because, you know, we gotta do those, obviously, this video is just my own opinion. You do not have to agree with this opinion. You will most likely not agree with this opinion. My favorite season and my least favorite season might not line up with your own picks, so keep that in mind as we watch through the video. Also, this video will contain, as I said, specials as well, so we are including things like Day of the Departed, the pilots, and the Island. For those of you guys still wondering why we're including those, I just want to include everything that Ninjago has put out in TV show form. And we're also not going to be including the Ninjago movie, but we will be including March of the Oni. So if that makes sense to you guys, let's go ahead and kick things off. We've got a lot of seasons to get through here, so let's go ahead and get started by taking a look at what I have in the bottom of the list. At the bottom of the list, we have Day of the Departed, which I'm sure is not a surprise to anyone. For those of you guys that are new on the channel, I'm quite infamous in the YouTube scene for not really caring about Day of the Departed all that much. I think it's one of the worst things to come out of Ninjago. I don't really care for it at all. I have issues with the writing, character traits, and the villain. I really don't like Yang as a villain. I think he works in Season 5, but not here. I feel like this story arc tried way too hard to give Cole something to do, and it just came off as a very, very rough first attempt at giving Cole his own story. We would see better Cole stories later on, but for right now, Day of the Departed is still one of my least favorite things throughout Ninjago, and that's why it takes the bottom of the list. Like I said, I'm sure it's not a surprise to anybody. Moving right along, we have Season 7, Hands of Time. Now, Hands of Time is very mixed in the Ninjago community. Some folks really enjoy it, some folks really don't. I'm kind of in the middle for Hands of Time, if we're being honest. I don't really think that Hands of Time is all that terrible, but it definitely has some improving to do. The main issues that I have with Hands of Time are, again, animation, writing, character traits, voice acting. Pretty much everything that was wrong with Day of the Departed is also wrong with Hands of Time. However, what Hands of Time has over Day of the Departed is an excellent set of villains, those of course being Achronix and Crux. These two are some of Ninjago's greatest villains in my opinion, and it's kind of rough that I have to put their season so far down on the list, but the rest of the season does indeed kind of weigh all the good stuff down. In terms of other good stuff about Hands of Time, I loved seeing Rei and Maya back, and Kai's relationship with his father was explored. I loved seeing that. I also loved the expanding of Ninjago's history and their lore. So Hands of Time is pretty much a mixed bag, like I said. Not great, but also not terrible. It's pretty much just good, you know? It's average. Next up on the list, we have the pilot season. Now, depending on where this actually aired for you, it might have been 4 episodes, it might have been 2 episodes. Here in the United States, it aired as 2 episodes, so a 2-episode special. This is Ninjago's very first thing ever in terms of like a show, and I thought it did a really good job. The pilots are still very nostalgic to me, even to this day. I like to rewatch them every now and then, just to get my nostalgia juices pumping. You guys know how it goes. But I guess in terms of things that the pilot is lacking, I think a clear sense of direction is appropriate to say, and maybe even a clear villain. I mean, we're told that it's Garmadon, but Garmadon really doesn't have that much of a presence. But in terms of good stuff, like I said, this was the start. We got introduced to the ninja, Master Wu, the golden weapons, the land of Ninjago in the series itself. So it's definitely not terrible. I just have a couple of minor issues with it. It was Ninjago's humble beginnings. It's not going to be anything super perfect, but it was a good enough start to launch pretty much everything else that we're going to be talking about on this list. So big props to the pilots for making that happen, but it's still not my favorite thing about Ninjago ever. Next up on the list, we have Season 11, Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu. Now, this season could very well be split up into 2 parts. We have the Fire chapter and the Ice chapter, and I feel like a lot of people would have preferred me to split these 2 up, but they are technically still one season. So here is Season 11 as an entirety. Now, Season 11 had a lot of really good things going for it. Right off the bat, it's very experimental. We had 30 episodes this season, which is insane, more than any other Ninjago season ever, and it's one of the longest seasons that Ninjago has ever put out in that regard. In terms of other experimental things, we experimented this season with different art styles, different techniques, and of course the characters were a little different too. There was also a lot of experimenting going on between the Part 1 and Part 2 format, but some folks really did not respond all that well to this. My main issue with Season 11 is some of the writing and some of the episodes being wasted potential, if that makes sense. Some episodes I would have preferred to have been removed entirely and substituted for different stories, much needed development perhaps, but my main issue with Season 11 is the villain. I really do not like Esphira. Esphira was the main villain during the Fire Chapter arc, and I really don't like her. Very simple villain, very simply motivated. Now, that's not to say that other Ninjago villains have, breathtakingly long backstories and interesting ideals, but Esphira is very bland and basic compared to several other Ninjago villains. And that's why I would say Season 11 is overall lacking. It does have some very good ideas, such as, again, the experiments. Forbidden Spinjitzu is touched on a lot too. That's a very cool aspect of Ninjago. And I really need to touch on, I guess, the evil Zane idea. That idea is still awesome. Zane being the Ice Emperor, still a very perfect idea. It's just a shame that it wasn't utilized in a better written season, but that's just my opinion. Next up on the list, we have Season 14, The Island. Now, The Island is very good, I think. It's very underrated in my opinion, but it is also very short. A lot of people's big issues with The Island is the runtime, which I do agree it's quite short, and that is quite a, I guess, small gap to tell a coherent story. In terms of actually coming up with a storyline to actually use and present to us, I feel like Season 14 struggled in that regard. But there are some good things going on, like I said. I really enjoyed the island setting. I loved seeing the backstory between Wajira, the Keepers, the first Spinjitzu Master. All that stuff is excellent. I love expanding on the world when we can. But in terms of things that this season is lacking, like I said, runtime is a big thing. Very short season, not really enough to make a huge impact, I think. But in terms of just the island on its own, it's a fun little side story that really doesn't have that much to do with the overall, I guess, narrative of Ninjago. And I know some people are going to take issue with that, but ultimately I feel like it's not that big of a deal. I liked the island for what it was, and I would rather watch this over something like Season 11. So that's why it's above Season 11. Still not great, but still not, not awful or anything like that. Next up, we have Season 1. Here we start getting into the really, really good stuff. This is technically one of the very first Ninjago seasons, so it's kind of nice to see this season again. Rewatching it and revisiting it is always a charming experience, and this season actually did a lot for the ninja. Gave them all individual episodes and arcs, showed us what their true potentials were all about, and especially in the case of Zane, actually showed who these people are. TikTok is still one of my favorite Ninjago episodes of all time, and I feel like it definitely deserves the title of the best episode, at least in some degree. I feel like Season 1 overall, though, is a very good season, very much setting up for what was to come, but also establishing some really well-needed character traits that we really didn't see in the pilots. I feel like Season 1 took what the pilots did best and expanded on them, creating an actual story in which the series could, spin off and create more seasons for. Season 1 was a very, very good start. Following Season 1, we have Season 2. Now, my biggest issue with Season 2 is the, I guess, filler arc, if you want to call it that. I know it's not technically filler in some regards, but still, the first couple of episodes of Season 2 are not all that great. I feel like the season picks up around Child's Play, sort of like in the middle of the season. That's where things really get going. The biggest compliment that I can give Season 2, though, is that it houses one of my favorite Ninjago arcs of all time. That, of course, being the final battle. Now, people will diss on the final battle. I don't really care. I still find it to be very enjoyable. The final battle was something that I was very much looking forward to growing up, and all the hype surrounding it was insane back in the day, and then the final battle actually happened, and it was marvelous. I still really enjoy it to this day. It's one of my favorite Ninjago scenes ever. The biggest thing weighing this season down, though, like I said, is the first couple of episodes. Not all that great in my opinion. So unfortunately, Season 2 falls in this spot on the list, but it's always fun to revisit, especially for the final battle arc, and I do find it better than all the other seasons that I had previously listed. Next up on the list, we have Season 12, Prime Empire. This season, talk about experimental. This season kind of went all out. They put the ninja in a video game world and gave us a really, I guess, digitized season for the first time. Season 3 kind of toyed with that a little bit, but Season 12 kind of goes all out. Now, Season 12 is indeed a Jay-focused story, not the first one that we will see on this list, but I really enjoyed how they actually focused on Jay. There could be some more development towards him. He could have some more spotlight, but ultimately I feel like Prime Empire was a very good step up for Jay's character. In terms of the world, like I said, Prime Empire is very expansive, very unique. I love it quite a bit. Unagami is a pretty good villain, I'd say. Not the best villain ever, but he's passable, I guess. He's not Esphira, so that's good. But ultimately, Prime Empire, like I said, is a very unique season. You need to be in the right mood to watch Prime Empire, I think. I think it's a lot better than something like Season 11, but I don't think it's as good as Season 13, if that makes sense. 2020 was a very good year for Ninjago overall, and Prime Empire definitely did not disappoint. I just think there's a lot of competition. Prime Empire isn't that good to me because there are other seasons seasons that are infinitely better in my opinion, so it kind of gets outshadowed in that regard. But it's still a very good season. I'd recommend watching Prime Empire if you have not done so already. Next up on the list, we have Season 6, Skybound. Going from J season to J season here, we have Skybound. Now, Skybound I really enjoy for a lot of reasons. For one, Nadokon. Nadokon is one of the best villains in Ninjago, period. I think he's awesome. Very menacing, very crooked, just very perfect as a villain overall. And Jay is cool too. Jay and Nia have a really cool arc in this season, and if you guys know me, you would know that I love Jay and Nia. I love that relationship. So seeing this play out in Skybound was really fun. We got to see their reunion of sorts after spending a couple of seasons apart. We got to see them come back together. Now Jay, like I said, is a very good main character. I think he has a lot of potential to lead other Ninjago stories if they really wanted him to, and Nadokon is a fantastic villain. I just really enjoy the plot of this season too. Nadokon hunting down the ninja one by one. It creates for a very fun and exciting season to watch. I think season 6 does a lot of things right, and in terms of things that it does wrong, the only thing that I can say is that the ending is kind of a cop-out, but even then it's not that bad. People like to rip on Skybound for the ending, but I personally don't think it's all that bad. I think it's necessary, and again, what else did we really expect for an ending? Next up on the list, we have Season 9, Hunted. The second part of the Oni trilogy is here, and it's pretty much my least favorite part of the Oni trilogy. That doesn't mean that Hunted is bad, though. Hunted has some really good stuff going on, especially with the character of Master Wu. Master Wu gets a lot of development this season, especially with Cole. Cole and Wu have a really good dynamic this season. I've been on record saying that it's one of the cutest relationships ever. It certainly is. Cole being a father to Master Wu, awesome. Love to see it. In terms of the plot and setting, we have a couple of different settings. We have Ninjago and the First Realm. Both sides, I think, do their best to actually expand on their own lore, but I feel like the First Realm stuff is a little bit more important. That stuff's a little bit more unique. In terms of Ninjago, we have more stuff with Lloyd, Harumi, Garmadon, all that kind of stuff, and that stuff is fun too, but I was more interested in what was going on in the First Realm. Fortunately, this season does take a lot of time to develop the First Realm and its inhabitants, and gives us a very unique kind of Mad Max inspired season, which is always awesome to see. I loved Season 9 for a lot of reasons, but I really don't think it's as good as some of the other entries in the Oni trilogy, and some of the writing did indeed leave a little bit to be desired. Next up, we have Season 3, Rebooted. Rebooted had all the hype surrounding it back in the day when it came out. It was the big relaunching of Ninjago after Ninjago was initially cancelled at the end of Season 2, and I think Rebooted pulled it off really well. It focused on the character of Zane, which I think is awesome. Zane did a lot of really cool stuff this season, including sacrificing himself towards the end, which I kind of wish was a little bit more permanent, and I wished that we really didn't find out that he was alive at the end of Season 3. Would have been a nice surprise for the next season. However, Zane versus the Ninjroids and the Overlord is awesome. My biggest issue with Season 3, similarly to the Island, is the runtime. I think the season is very short, and some of the episodes feel a little wasted. Some moments in the episodes feel a little, I guess, wasted and tired as opposed to other things that we could have gotten. So I'm not really blaming Rebooted for not using its time correctly, but it did kind of feel like the bridge between old Ninjago and new Ninjago. It's kind of like that weird transition from one thing to another. It felt very much like a bridge, which isn't a bad thing, but I felt like it could have done a lot more to stand on its own and claim its own identity. For now, though, Rebooted sits in this spot comfortably on my list. It is very good, don't get me wrong. Now we have something that might be a little controversial. I picked March of the Oni over everything that I just mentioned. Yeah, I really enjoy March of the Oni. I think it's genuinely one of Ninjago's most underrated things. Now, granted, wherever you live, this might have aired as a TV movie or 4 distinct episodes. I think it works as both. I think in terms of a movie, it does have some awkward editing choices, but if you watch it as 4 episodes, it's not that bad. March of the Oni is the end of the Oni trilogy, and I think it's awesome. I loved focusing on the Oni invasion as the Oni terrorized Ninjago. The ninja and Garmadon need to team up to go ahead and fight these things off, and that's always fun to see. Garmadon in this season is so funny. He is easily one of my favorite interpretations of the character. Absolutely loved Garmadon this go around. In terms of other stuff, this season is also very nostalgic. It takes a lot of aspects from the pilots and expands on them to make them better, dare I say, and overall I thought that March of the Oni was a very good time. I really enjoyed March of the Oni, and I was quite surprised to find out that not a lot of people felt the same. I really enjoy it. I think it has some really solid character moments. Some stuff is dumb, like Cole falling off the bounty, but hey, I thought that Season 10 was still doing a really good job regardless, even though, like I said, it aired as different things in different territories. I still feel like Season 10 is a very, very good time, and it's very underrated at that. Now, moving into the top 5, we have the most recent Ninjago season, that of course being Seabound. Now, Seabound has been getting very positive reception lately, and I can totally see why. I absolutely enjoyed Seabound front to back. I don't really have any distinct issues with Seabound. Not even the ending bothers me, which is definitely bothering a lot of people. I feel like the ending paved the way for Nia's character, and the entirety of Seabound actually did a lot to boost Nia's character up even more. One of my biggest complaints about Nia was that she really didn't have any character development. She was just kind of this wooden character from season to season. This season turns that entirely upside down and gives us a very solid written story for Nia. I think it's awesome. In terms of bad guys, we got Prince Kalmar, and he's super fun too. Very well written villain, very evil, very psychotic, and you know me. Usually those guys turn out to be some of my favorite villains, and Kalmar is definitely up there in terms of villains. I will say some villains are a little bit better than him, but Kalmar is still doing a really good job this season. In terms of lore and expansive backstory, we do get a lot of that this season. There's definitely some established history going on here, and that's always good to get. It's always good to get some expansive knowledge on Ninjago's backstory, and this season does not disappoint. Something else that I really enjoyed about this season was Maya. Of course, Ray and Maya, Kai and Nia's parents, are back, and Maya is queen. I love her very much. I think that Maya is a very, very good character. Overall, though, Seabound is a very good watch. Like I said, front to back, absolutely enjoyable all the way through, and it's easily one of Ninjago's best seasons to date. I can see why it's getting a lot of hype and why a lot of people really enjoy it, and I'm really glad that some of the newer Ninjago seasons are getting a lot of hype and respect, because I think that they deserve it for the most part. In the number 4 spot, we have Season 5, Possession. Now, Possession is a fan favorite season. 2015 was a very good year for Ninjago, and the summertime introduced us to Possession, and I have a lot of nostalgia for this season, surprisingly. I think Possession did a really good job in terms of its storytelling and its villain. Like I said, Moro is incredible, the storyline with Lloyd is perfect, and I love how this season kind of focused on the 4 original ninja, while also giving Nia her own chance to shine as the water ninja for the first time. Really enjoyed this season. The final battle is one of Ninjago's most cinematic moments, and in terms of world building, like I said, this season has it all. We got introduced to a lot of new stuff, including more expansive knowledge on the realms of Ninjago, which of course run parallel to the world that we know, and we actually got to physically visit some of those realms too, which is always fun. Like I said, this season is one of the most cinematic and beautiful seasons to look at. Watching the season front to back, it almost seems like you're watching a movie, and for that I do need to applaud this season. Very good writing, very good storytelling, very good characterization from the villains, the ninja, especially Nia, and Lloyd to an extent. Moro is an awesome villain. We got introduced to a lot of new things throughout Ninjago, including air jitsu, which was cool, but ultimately with Possession, I think they did a really good job here and made a very memorable and, like I said, a very fan favorite season at that. Going into the top 3, my top 3 have not really changed. If you guys have been watching some of my videos for a while, you might see this top 3 coming, but in terms of my number 3 placement, I'm going to go ahead and give that to Season 13, Master of the Mountain. I am a very big fan of Cole, and when Cole actually got his own season last year for Season 13, I was overjoyed. I felt like the season did a really good job at establishing Cole's character, what he stands for, who he is, and the power that he could ultimately unlock through his own abilities. I really enjoyed this season because it explored not only the Earth element, but like I said, it also explored Cole's character. In terms of other characters, we have Princess Vanya, who's awesome. I love Vanya. But in terms of bad guys, I will say the season is kind of lacking. The Skull Sorcerer is not the most compelling villain ever, and several of his undead minions are also not all that great. The Geckos and the Months kind of bother me more than they should, but I just really love how much Cole is given a focus here. And every ninja has something to do. Every ninja kind of has their own little side story going on, but Cole's is front and center, finally. After the failed attempt that was Day of the Departed at giving Cole something to do and something to call his own, we get this season, and it absolutely blew me away. I love Season 13 so much. Now, there is some debate in the community whether or not this is better or worse than Seabound. I'm still sticking by that it's better than Seabound. I know some folks are going to disagree with that, but to me, Season 13 is the best of the Wild Brain seasons that we've received thus far, for all the reasons that I just talked about. I love Season 13. Can't really compliment it enough, even though it does have some minor issues. In the second place spot on this list, we have Sons of Garmadon. This was a very controversial season when it came out, but it ultimately proved itself and blew a lot of people away in the process. Sons of Garmadon is peak Ninjago writing, at least in my opinion. This season is dark, it's gritty, it's amazing, and it does a lot for our favorite ninja as well as other characters, and especially Ninjago itself. We were introduced to so many things. We were introduced to the Oni masks, characters like Harumi, the Sons of Garmadon, and of course Mistake gets a little bit more of a presence as well, which I thought was cool, bringing her back from older seasons and revealing her to be an Oni. Brilliant idea. In terms of the ninja, like I said, this is the first season where we actually are getting these movie designs in the actual show, and at the time it was very controversial, but I feel like a lot of people kind of grew to enjoy it, and for me, I really enjoy a lot of the newer designs a lot more than the older ones. Just my opinion, don't get mad at me, but still, Sons of Garmadon is very impressive in terms of writing. As an aspiring screenwriter myself, Sons of Garmadon is a very big inspiration to me, not only in terms of its characterization of certain ninja, but also in terms of its dark and grim storytelling. I like writing a lot of really dark and gritty things, and this season is just peak inspiration for that. So for that, I need to applaud Season 8. The only thing that I can say in terms of, I guess, the negative is that this does kind of, I guess, lessen the impact of Garmadon's sacrifice a little bit, and it is part one of a three-part story, so not everything is going to be resolved at the end of the season, but as its own thing, as Sons of Garmadon, I think it works, and I think it works really well. In terms of my number one has not changed. It has been Season 4, Tournament of Elements, for the longest time, because I really enjoy the season. Tournament is by far my favorite Ninjago story, not only in terms of its storytelling, but also in terms of its expansive world building. Like I said, I love when Ninjago expands out its lore and establishes new things within the world, and this season does that a lot. This was one of the first big, I guess, seasons after the finale, if you want to call it that established a lot of new lore. We got introduced to the Elemental Masters, Elemental Dragons, Master Chen, who played a large part during the Serpentine War, and the Serpentine War is, like I said, one of my favorite things across Ninjago history, and I loved seeing how this war ultimately turned out. The Elemental Masters are also super fun, especially Skylar. You guys know I love Skylar. I think she's an awesome character. Want to see her back at some point in time, but still, this season did a lot for Ninjago, especially in the character of Master Chen. Like I said, Master Chen is insane. He's one of my favorite insane villains that we've seen throughout Ninjago, and his partner in crime, Klaus, is definitely not all that lesser in terms of insanity. We've seen Klaus, of course, a couple times since this season, and for good reason. Klaus is a very good villain. In fact, he's a lot better than Chen in a lot of ways, but Chen is still charming to me. Don't know why, just is. Also, this season gave Garmadon a huge role. Garmadon sacrifices himself at the end of the season and plays the sensei role for the ninja without Wu, which I think is awesome. Sensei Garmadon, really down for that. But overall, Tournament is still fantastic to me. Can't really express why I love Tournament so much. I just do. I think it's genius. The writing, the pacing, the storytelling, the world building, the new characters, the new locations, the villain, it's all just so good. The only thing that I have to complain about regarding Season 4 is the ending. I think the tournament section of the season is very strong, and once the tournament ends and after the ninja leave Chen's Island, the season does go downhill a little bit for me, I'm gonna be honest, but still, the tournament aspect of the season is so good, so well-paced, so fun to watch, that it does kind of just make me ignore the last couple of episodes. The last few episodes are not terrible, but they are still, I guess, lacking in terms of what we had seen prior. So for that, Tournament is my favorite, still my number one, and that'll pretty much conclude my list of all of the Ninjago seasons ranked worst to best. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. That'll pretty much wrap it up for my thoughts here today. Feel free to leave a comment down below talking about what you think is the best season, or feel free to rank them like I did. Rank all of the Ninjago seasons from worst to best. Leave all your thoughts down below, guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. This was a very difficult video to record, so if you guys wouldn't mind leaving a like and subscribing, and hopefully you guys aren't too mad at me for my picks. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and check out the links down below in the description for other forms of social media. As always, big shout out goes out to my Patreon supporters, including once again the marvelous Jan. Thank you guys so much for watching this video once again. My name is TannerFishies, and with that I bid you farewell.